Welcome to the Applying for Section 501c3 Status Overview course. This course is presented by the Exempt Organizations Office of the IRS. Hi, I'm Legal, the Stay Exempt Eagle, and I'll guide you through the courses here at Stay Exempt. In this course, I'll talk about the life cycle of a typical tax-exempt organization, and you'll become familiar with the benefits and responsibilities associated with achieving exempt status. You'll learn the basics of 501c3 eligibility, the difference between a private foundation and a public charity, and how to apply for tax-exempt status. Finally, we'll talk about the rules for running an organization while under consideration for tax-exempt status. Let's start with the basics.
Hi, I'm Richard. I've had a passion for helping animals since I was a child. I'm considering starting an animal rescue to fulfill my life's dream of preventing cruelty to animals. I've heard it could be advantageous to obtain 501c3 tax-exempt status, but I'm not sure what all that entails. Can you help me?
Well, it's a good thing you came to Stay Exempt. I'll be happy to help you through the process of understanding 501c3 tax-exempt status. By the end of this experience, you'll understand what it takes to become an organization with 501c3 exempt status. Section 501c3 is one of several parts of the Internal Revenue Code providing tax-exempt status to qualifying organizations. 501c3 includes both public charities and private foundations. We'll discuss the differences later, but in this course, we'll mostly be talking about public charities.
Wow, that's good to know. So, how do I get started?
Well, Richard, being a tax-exempt organization is not a static thing. It's a process with a whole life cycle to it. Let's talk about the life cycle, and once you understand the process, then we can talk about the benefits and responsibilities. After that, I can walk you through the first steps of applying for tax-exempt status and point you to some great resources for operating as a tax-exempt organization.
You mentioned that there's a whole process to becoming recognized as exempt under Section 501c3. What's that like?
There are 5 stages in the life cycle of a public charity. They include starting out, applying for exemption, required filings, ongoing compliance, and significant events. The first 2 stages, starting out and applying for exemption, are unique because you should only do them once for any single organization. For the purpose of this course, we're only going to concentrate on creating and maintaining one organization at a time. What's different about the other 3 stages is that a single organization has to deal with each of those issues multiple times. Some required filings are annual, for example. We'll talk about each of these stages in a little more detail. Before we move on, it's important that you know there's a lot more information about the life cycle on irs.gov's Charities and Nonprofits webpage.
So, if I'm starting out, what's the first thing I should do?
First, you need to create an organization under your state's law. Your state will have rules that would likely make your animal rescue a nonprofit, which is a state-level classification. When you're creating your organization, you'll need to create organizing documents based on the requirements of your state. You'll need these if you apply for 501c3 tax exemption. To apply for federal tax exemption, you'll need to acquire an Employee Identification Number, or EIN, which is issued by the IRS.
But I don't have any employees, so I'm not an employer.
Even so, you still need an EIN. Your EIN is similar to your personal Social Security number, only it's for your business. It identifies you to the IRS. If you decide on applying, you'll probably need more information on the EIN step. Next is applying for tax exemption.
So, you said the next stage was applying?
That's right. For this stage, you'll need to fill out Form 1023. That's a big step. Of course, there are resources to help you on the IRS website. We'll be covering this step more later in this training once you decide to apply for tax-exempt status.
That sounds great. What's next?
Now let's talk about your required filings.
So, you said that this stage is different because these are things I'll have to do regularly. What are the requirements?
Once the IRS has granted your organization tax-exempt status, it's important that you meet the mandatory annual filing requirements. Most 501c3 organizations need to file annual exempt organization returns, and some organizations may be required to file unrelated business income tax filings and other returns and reports you'll learn about here at Stay Exempt. Once you have your tax-exempt status, you should look into some of the other courses here at Stay Exempt, like required disclosures, unrelated business income, and courses on the annual form you'll submit, the Form 990. The next stage is ongoing compliance.
All right, so I know I have annual filing requirements. What's next?
Well, it's helpful if you understand how an organization can avoid jeopardizing its tax-exempt status. Employment taxes, public disclosure requirements, and other ongoing compliance issues are also important. There are other courses here at Stay Exempt that can help you with that. There's the Maintaining Tax-Exempt Status course, one on required disclosures, which tells you what information the public is entitled to see, and employment issues courses. You should go through those when you've applied for tax-exempt status. There's one last stage, the significant events information.
So the last stage is significant events. What kinds of significant events are there?
These significant events all have to do with your tax-exempt status. The events include, but aren't limited to, audits, private letter rulings, and termination proceedings. For more information on this stage, go to the IRS website. Now that you've learned about the stages in the life cycle, let's try an exercise. Let's see how well you remember the life cycle. Great job! You've completed the life cycle section of this course. Next, we'll talk more with Richard about why tax-exempt status might be right for him, and what responsibilities he'll have if he is granted 501c3 exempt status for his organization.
All right, so I'm just starting out. What steps should I take before applying?
Before you can be sure that 501c3 status is right for you, you'll need to understand some of the benefits and responsibilities that come with tax exemption, the steps required to become tax exempt, and the rules your organization must follow after you apply. As your animal rescue grows, your exempt status responsibilities will grow too. First things first, you'll need to learn about 501c3 status so you can make an informed decision and then apply. Next, we'll do an exercise together to separate the benefits from the responsibilities of 501c3 status. So why don't you try to guess what the benefits of 501c3 tax-exempt status are? Look through the list and select all the options that seem like benefits.
I see that there are a lot of financial benefits.
That's right. In addition to being exempt from federal income tax, contributions to organizations exempt under Section 501c3 are tax deductible. You may be exempt from paying state income, sales, and employment taxes. You have access to reduced postal rates. You are exempt from paying federal unemployment tax, and you can receive tax-exempt financing.
With all these great benefits, I bet there are responsibilities as well.
Of course. We'll go over them.
So what are the responsibilities for a tax-exempt organization?
Your most important ongoing responsibility is to keep your organization's activities focused on accomplishing the exempt purpose you were approved for. You'll also need to make sure your organization's records are in good order, that it meets annual IRS filing requirements, and it complies with public disclosure rules. I'll give you a brief overview of these last three.
Okay, legal. You mentioned record keeping. Do I have to keep a lot more records than I normally would?
You should keep detailed records, including records you'd probably want to keep for any business. For example, you're required to keep books and records detailing all activities, both financial and non-financial. Publication 4221-PC, Compliance Guide for 501c3 Public Charities, has information on why you need to keep records, what records you should keep, and how long to keep your records. Most public charities recognized as tax-exempt under Section 501c3 of the Code are required to file an annual information return, either the Form 990, Form 990EZ, or the Form 990N. Good records make it easier to complete your required annual filings. Certain categories of organizations are not required to file, including churches and certain church-related organizations.
Who else do I have to show these records to? And do I have to make all of my records public?
You're required to make public certain documents that you file with the IRS, but not all of your records. You must make the following documents available upon request: the organization's annual return for its 3 most recent years after the due date, including any extensions. This includes Form 990, 990EZ, 990PF, and Form 990T. All Form 990 schedules except Schedule B, their attachments and supporting documents, your approved application for exemption and all supporting documents, and the determination letter from the IRS showing that your organization has been granted tax-exempt status. There are additional rules about what must be disclosed, how to provide documentation, and consequences for non-compliance. All of that's covered in the required disclosures course on Stay Exempt. Let's test your knowledge again. Which of the following is not a responsibility of a public charity? Great job! You've learned about the benefits and responsibilities associated with 501c3 status. Next, we'll talk more with Richard about why this status might be right for him and what he'll need to do to apply for it. So Richard, now that you know basically what it means to have a 501c3 organization and how to maintain it, do you think you're ready to apply?
Yes, I can definitely see how this would benefit my organization. What do I need?
Do you have an EIN?
No, I don't. But I remember you saying I need it whether or not I have employees. How do I get one?
There are a number of ways you can apply for an EIN. The fastest is to go to the IRS website or call our toll-free number and get an EIN you can use immediately. You can also fax your Form SS4, Application for Employer Identification Number, and you'll receive your EIN within 4 business days. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way, by completing Form SS4 and mailing it to the IRS. Next, you'll need to gather your organizing documents.
All right. I know how to get my EIN. What else do I need?
An organization can't qualify for exempt status without an organizing document. That means your application will be rejected without it. For a corporation, which is an organization granted corporate status by a state agency, its organizing document will be its Articles of Incorporation. For all others, or unincorporated organizations, the organizing document might be called a charter, constitution, or Articles of Association. To qualify for exemption under Section 501c3, the organizing document must contain 3 provisions, including some specific language. First, the organizing document must have a clause that limits the organization's purposes to 1 or more of the exempt purposes listed in Code Section 501c3. Here's an example of the wording of this clause. Next, the organizing document must not give the organization the ability or permission to engage in activities that don't advance those exempt purposes. Finally, the organizing documents must include a dissolution clause, which states that the assets of the organization, such as the organization's money and property, are permanently dedicated to an exempt purpose described under Code Section 501c3. Here's an example of the wording of the dissolution clause. There's more information about these clauses in Publication 557. You can find more information, including sample documents, at the Charities and Nonprofits section of irs.gov.
I've heard an exempt organization should have bylaws. Are bylaws different from the organizing documents?
Yes, Richard, bylaws are an organization's internal operating rules. Federal tax law doesn't require specific language in the bylaws. However, state law may require you to have bylaws, so it's a good idea to contact your state to find out the specific requirements.
My organization is in California. Do you know who I should contact there?
In the Life Cycle of a Public Charity area of the IRS Charities and Nonprofits page, there's a page about the bylaws, and you'll find links to the websites of the appropriate state officials. Let's test your knowledge. Which of the following are requirements for the organizational documents of charities applying for tax-exempt status? Great job! Now you understand the basics of 501c3 eligibility. Next, we'll help Richard learn how to determine if his organization is a private foundation or public charity.
You mentioned that an organization must have one or more specific purposes to qualify as tax-exempt under Section 501c3. What are those purposes again?
A 501c3 organization is organized and operated exclusively for purposes that are religious, charitable, scientific, testing for public safety, literary or educational, designed to foster national or international amateur sports competition, or for the prevention of cruelty to children or animals. There are many kinds of organizations that operate for these purposes. For example, organizations that provide relief of the poor, distressed, or underprivileged, those that lessen neighborhood tensions, or those that defend human and civil rights usually qualify as charitable organizations. Educational organizations can be schools, museums, symphony orchestras, training for the unemployed, dance classes, and zoos. If your organization doesn't operate for one of these exempt purposes, perhaps it meets another 501c3 category, like 501c4 for civic leagues, 501c19 for veterans organizations, or even 501c7 for social clubs. Download Publication 557, Tax-Exempt Status for your organization.
So, because I'm planning to start an organization that prevents cruelty to animals, a listed 501c3 purpose you just covered, do I need to do anything else to establish that it would qualify as a 501c3?
Yes, you need to show how your organization will meet the organizational and operational tests. But we'll focus specifically on how a prospective 501c3 organization does it. First, let's talk about the organizational test. This test is used to determine if the organization is properly organized. To pass this test, the organization must limit its purposes to one or more of the exempt purposes listed in Code Section 501c3. Not permit the organization to engage in a non-exempt activity, and ensure that assets of the organization are permanently dedicated to an exempt purpose.
This sounds really familiar.
That's because these are provisions you need to have in the organizing document we just talked about. So if you write your organizing document correctly, this test will be easy to pass. Now let's talk about the operational test.
Okay. So the organizational test was pretty easy. What about the operational test?
Well, the operational test covers how your organization is actually operated. To pass the operational test, Your organization must show that its principal activities will be to further its exempt purposes. Your organization also has to limit the participation in certain types of activities and absolutely refrain from others. The IRS assesses the activities you describe in your Form 1023 application to make sure they qualify. This test is conducted when you're first applying for tax-exempt status. But if your activities get out of balance after you receive your status, or if your organization engages in prohibited activities once you're up and running, you could lose your tax-exempt status and be subject to both taxes and penalties.
What are the restricted and prohibited activities?
If you're interested in learning more about these kinds of activities, you should start with the Maintaining Tax-Exempt Status course, which discusses how you could possibly jeopardize your tax-exempt status. There's also the Unrelated Business Income course, the Political Campaigns and Public Charities course, the Required Disclosures course, and the Employment Issues course. Now let's talk about the differences between a public charity and a private foundation.
So, once I passed both tests, can I be recognized as a tax-exempt charity?
Not quite yet. When an entity qualifies as a 501c3 organization, the IRS presumes it's a private foundation unless it can show that it's a public charity.
So, what's the difference between a public charity and a private foundation?
The main difference is where the organization's financial support comes from. Generally, a public charity has a broad base of support, while a private foundation has very limited sources of support. There are also different tax rules. So, for example, private foundations are subject to excise taxes that aren't imposed on public charities. There are more differences, and you can look into those on the irs.gov website under Life Cycle of a Public Charity Private Foundation. There's also a course on foundation classification called The Wonderful World of Foundation Classification. For now, we'll concentrate on public charities. Some organizations automatically qualify as public charities based on the code, so they're called statutory public charities. Some examples are churches, schools, and organizations providing medical or hospital care, including medical education and research. These organizations still have to pass the operational and organizational tests. Or, if your organization receives significant public support, or if it provides support to other public charities, you may qualify that way. Otherwise, you'll have to demonstrate you are a public charity by other means.
My friend Chloe is starting an organization that could be considered a private foundation. How can she show the IRS that her organization is actually a public charity?
If Chloe's organization is not a statutory public charity, it may still be a public charity if it passes the organizational and operational tests and shows that it receives broad public support. To have broad public support, her organization must be able to demonstrate the following: that it receives a substantial part of its support in the form of contributions from publicly supported organizations, governmental units, and/or the general public, or that it normally receives no more than 1/3 of its support from gross investment income and unrelated business income combined, and gets more than 1/3 of its support from contributions, membership fees, and gross receipts from activities related to its exempt functions. This is another situation where good record keeping can really help you. Let's talk more about Chloe's situation.
Chloe's organization is still really small. I'm not sure if she can show broad public support yet.
No problem. If she can show that her organization can reasonably expect to meet these criteria, her organization, if granted 501c3 status, will be treated as a public charity for the first 5 years, regardless of how much public support it actually gets.
So what happens on year 6?
At that point, the IRS starts monitoring the status of all public charities based on the public support reported on Schedule A, Public Charity Status, and Public Support of your Form 990. Because her organization is not a statutory public charity, she'll have to show that her organization meets one of the public support tests over a 5-year computation period, including the current year and the 4 preceding years. If her organization passes one of the tests, her organization will remain a public charity for that year and the next tax year. Select the appropriate answer to go in the blank space. Enter the appropriate answer. Great job! Now you know how to determine whether your organization is a private foundation or a public charity. Next, we'll help Richard with the basic requirements of applying for tax-exempt status.
Now that I understand the benefits of tax-exempt status under Section 501c3, I think I'm ready to start the application process.
Congratulations, Richard. Filling out the forms can be a big task, but before you start, there are a few things you should know. First, you need to know which documents are required, the timeline for applying, the user fees for applying, how group and church exemptions work, and some key information for running your organization while you're waiting for tax-exempt status approval. First, let's start with the overview of Form 1023, as that is the bulk of your application.
What do I need to apply for tax-exempt status?
You need two basic things, Form 1023 and your user fee.
What is Form 1023?
Form 1023 is the application for recognition of exemption document.
So how much is this going to cost me?
Well, the amounts can change from year to year. The user fee is based on the organization's average annual gross receipts over a 4-year period. Gross receipts are the amount an organization receives from all sources before taking out any costs or expenses.
But my organization hasn't been around for 4 years.
The gross receipts are based on funds your organization plans to receive or funds it has actually received over a 4-year period.
Is there a deadline for me to file my Form 1023?
Good question, Richard. There are time limits. Generally, in order for the tax-exempt status of your organization to be recognized from the day you open, you need to file Form 1023 within 27 months of the end of the first month it was created. This timeline graphic will show you an ideal schedule for a new tax-exempt organization.
So how long will it take to get my application approved?
The IRS receives many applications for exemption, ranging from very straightforward to extremely complex. Immediately after receiving your application and user fee, we'll send you an acknowledgement notice and deposit the user fee. If we're able to approve your application, or if we need only a minor amount of additional information to complete our review, you'll hear from us again in about 90 days. If the application is very complicated or missing a substantial amount of information, it'll be assigned to an exempt organization's, also known as EO, specialist. This person will work directly with you to get all the information needed to make a proper assessment. So, if you haven't heard from us 90 days after you receive the acknowledgement notice, go to Where is my exempt application on irs.gov. If your organization meets the requirements for exemption, the IRS will issue a determination letter recognizing your organization's exempt status under Section 501c3 and also showing your foundation classification. This determination letter is an important document. You should keep it with your organization's permanent records. You'll need it for any public disclosure requests.
Okay, so what are group exemptions?
Sometimes the IRS recognizes a group of organizations as tax-exempt if they're affiliated with a central organization. This avoids the need for each organization to apply individually. A group exemption letter has the same effect as an individual exemption letter, but it applies to more than one organization.
So, if I work together with a couple of other animal rescues, can we apply as a group? We share the same overall mission, but we have slightly different organizational goals. Some focus on rescuing. Others want to build a location for animals that can't return to the wild. Another organization is strictly set up to promote animal rights by lobbying Congress for stricter animal neglect and abuse laws.
In principle, yes. You have to have one central organization that all the organizations are affiliated with.
Do churches have to apply too?
Another good question. Churches, including synagogues, temples, and mosques, don't have to file for tax exemption, yet they're still exempt from federal income tax, and the contributions they receive are tax deductible. But even though they aren't required to file an application, many do in order to receive a determination letter that proves their tax-exempt status and specifies that contributions to them are tax deductible.
So, once I'm running my organization and I've started the application process, is there anything else I need to do?
Yes, you can operate as a tax-exempt organization while you're awaiting approval, but donors won't have assurance that contributions to your organization are tax deductible until your application is approved. While you're waiting for approval, you can learn more about the responsibilities of a 501c3 organization. Do you remember what those are?
Yeah, you mentioned record keeping, annual filings, and public disclosures.
That's exactly right. You should take the Maintaining Tax-Exempt Status course to review all of the activities you need to be familiar with in order to maintain your status. Let's try a couple more knowledge checks. Let's test your knowledge. So, how do you determine the user fee associated with applying for tax-exempt status? Let's try another activity. Here are the items from the application timeline. Put the items in the proper order. Great job! Now you can explain how to apply for tax-exempt status and discuss the rules for running a tax-exempt organization. As we near the end of this course, I know I've shared a lot of exempt organization resources with you. I've put them together here, so feel free to review them. On behalf of everyone in the IRS Exempt Organizations Division, thank you for taking this course. Before you leave, please take a minute to send us your feedback. The information you provide will ensure that this and other courses at Stay Exempt provide a valuable learning experience for future participants. After you've sent your feedback, you can print out a certificate of completion as recognition for attending this course.